Eleanor's fingers trembled as she placed her queen on the board. Checkmate. She had just destroyed a duke in 4 moves, and every man in that smoke-filled room was staring at her like she'd committed murder. "If you win this match, I'll marry you," he'd mocked her 10 minutes ago. Now the Duke of Thornbury wasn't laughing anymore. But Eleanor knew something none of them did. Winning this game might have just cost her everything. Before we continue, subscribe to our channel and follow this story to the end. Comment your city below. I want to see how far Eleanor's journey travels tonight. The chess piece felt like a weapon in Eleanor's hand. She could hear them breathing, all those men in their tailored coats and expensive cravats, crowded around the table like vultures waiting for a carcass. The smoke from their cigars hung thick in the air, curling around the chandeliers of the Harrington Chess Society, like ghosts of all the women who'd never been allowed through these doors. Eleanor wasn't supposed to be here. She knew it. They knew it. And the man sitting across from her, Marcus Ashford, the newly titled Duke of Thornbury, definitely knew it. "Checkmate in 3 moves," he announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. His voice dripped with the casual confidence of someone who'd never lost anything that mattered. "Unless, of course, you'd like to concede now and save yourself the embarrassment." Eleanor's jaw tightened. She'd been playing chess in this club for 3 years under the name Margaret Shaw, supposedly the daughter of Lady Helena Waverley's music tutor. A convenient fiction, a necessary lie. The only way a woman like her could exist in a space like this without destroying her real life. "I don't concede," she said simply. The Duke's dark eyes flickered with something she couldn't name. Interest, maybe, or irritation. His fingers drummed against the mahogany table. "Stubborn," he murmured. "I admire that." He moved his knight, cutting off her escape route with surgical precision. "Though I wonder," he continued, that arrogant smile playing at his lips, "if you realize the position you're in, Miss Shaw." Eleanor didn't look up from the board. Her mind was already 3 moves ahead, calculating probabilities, seeing patterns these men would never notice. "I realize exactly where I am, Your Grace." She moved her bishop, opening a diagonal line of attack that would devastate his defense in 2 moves. "The question is whether you do." A ripple of murmurs circled the watching crowd. Someone coughed. Someone else laughed nervously. The Duke leaned forward, close enough that she caught his scent. Bergamot, and something darker, like smoke in old libraries. "Fascinating," he said quietly. "Tell me, Miss Shaw, if you win this match," his voice dropped to a purr, "what would you ask for?" "To be left alone to play chess in peace." How disappointingly practical. His rook swept across the board. A bold move. Aggressive. Predictable. "If you win this match," he said, and his smile turned sharp, "I'll marry you." The words landed like a slap. Several men laughed, that easy, dismissive sound of people who'd never been the punchline of anyone's joke. Eleanor's vision tunneled. Her fingers went white against the edge of the table. She should stay calm. She should be grateful, humble, invisible. All the things that had kept her safe in this room for 3 years. Instead, she heard herself say, "How generous, Your Grace. To offer a prize I'd sooner feed to the ravens than accept." The laughter stopped. The Duke's eyes widened fractionally. Then that almost smile returned, sharper now, more dangerous. "Well then," he said softly, "I suppose you'll have to lose, won't you? For your own protection." "I don't lose." "Everyone loses eventually, Miss Shaw." He captured her knight with casual efficiency. "The trick is choosing when." 3 moves later, she proved him wrong. Checkmate. The room erupted. Lord Stirling's booming laugh cut through the chaos. Lady Helena, watching from her chair near the window, the only other woman permitted in this space, raised her teacup in silent salute. And the Duke of Thornbury stared at the board as if it had personally betrayed him. "Impossible," someone muttered. "She got lucky," another voice dismissed. Eleanor rose, smoothing her skirts with hands that wanted to shake but absolutely would not. "Thank you for the game, Your Grace. Perhaps next time you'll remember not to underestimate your opponent." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Miss Shaw." She looked back. The Duke was standing now, tall enough that she had to tilt her chin up to meet his eyes. In them, she saw no anger, only that unsettling interest, burning brighter than before. "I always keep my promises," he said quietly. "Even the foolish ones." "Then perhaps you should make fewer of them." She walked away before he could respond, before the trembling in her legs could betray her. Behind her, she felt his gaze like a physical weight, following her across the room until she disappeared into the corridor beyond. Only then did Eleanor allow herself to breathe. She'd won, and somehow she'd just made everything infinitely more complicated. "You humiliated him." Lady Helena's voice carried a warning Eleanor didn't want to hear. They were in Helena's private guest quarters, preparing for the formal dinner that would follow the day's matches. Eleanor fastened the clasp of her simple necklace. Nothing too fine, nothing that would give her away, while Helena watched her reflection in the mirror with knowing eyes. "He humiliated himself," Eleanor corrected. "I simply played chess. You destroyed him in 4 moves after he mocked you in front of half the club." Helena's reflection smiled grimly. It was magnificent. It was also dangerous. "Why? I've beaten dozens of men here." "Because he's a duke, darling. Because he's young, handsome, and too intelligent for comfort." Helena moved closer, her voice dropping. "Because unlike the others, he doesn't look at you like you're a curiosity." Eleanor's hands stilled on her necklace. "How does he look at me?" "Like you're a puzzle he intends to solve." A chill traced Eleanor's spine. She'd felt it too, that weight of the Duke's attention, the way his dark eyes had tracked her across the board with calculating precision. "I'll be careful," she promised. "Be more than careful. Be boring." Helena touched her shoulder gently. "Be the grateful little nobody they've allowed into their sacred space. I know it wounds you, but the moment they discover you're actually Eleanor Price, daughter of a respectable family, playing chess under a false name." "I know." Eleanor's throat tightened. "My father would be devastated. Philip would be furious. And you'd suffer the scandal by association. Not to mention, you'd never play again." That was the real threat. Not social ruin, though that mattered, but the loss of this, the one place where her mind could breathe, where she was valued for her intelligence rather than her ability to simper and agree. "I'll be the perfect Margaret Shaw," Eleanor said firmly. "Grateful, humble, lucky." Helena studied her for a long moment. "Just remember, darling, the best lies are temporary. Eventually, truth finds a way to surface. Then I'll enjoy the lie while it lasts." Dinner was torture. 7 courses of endless masculine pontificating. Eleanor sat at the far end of the table, wedged between 2 older gentlemen who'd long ago ceased acknowledging her existence. She might as well have been furniture. The Duke of Thornbury sat at the center of power, commanding attention without effort. He was perhaps 31, dark-haired and broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that belonged on Roman coins, all sharp angles and aristocratic bones. When he laughed at something Lord Harrington said, the sound carried down the table like a caress. Eleanor focused determinedly on her soup. "Miss Shaw." She looked up, heart stuttering. Lord Stirling, God bless him, was attempting to draw her into conversation. A kindness that usually backfired by making her more conspicuous. "Yes, my lord?" His Grace was just saying he's never seen someone employ the Rui Lopez opening quite so aggressively as you did this afternoon. Stirling's eyes twinkled. "I thought you might explain your strategy." Every eye at the table turned toward her. Eleanor's fingers tightened around her spoon. "I'm sure His Grace is being generous," she said carefully. It was simply fortunate that— Don't. The Duke's voice cut across her deflection like a blade. Don't diminish what you did, he continued, and there was something almost fierce in his tone. It was calculated, brilliant, and utterly ruthless. Own it. The silence that followed felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Your Grace, Eleanor said slowly, choosing each word like a chess move. I was raised to believe that excessive pride in one's accomplishments is unbecoming. And I was raised to believe that false modesty is a waste of everyone's time. His dark eyes held hers across the length of the table. She couldn't look away. You're the finest player I've faced in years, he said. Why pretend otherwise? Because pretending keeps me safe, she thought. Because the moment I show my teeth, they'll remember I'm not supposed to be here at all. Perhaps, Lord Harrington interjected, his tone jovial but pointed. We should remember that Miss Shaw's presence here is itself an unusual circumstance. We wouldn't want her to become overconfident. The threat was delicate but unmistakable. Eleanor dropped her gaze to her plate. Of course, my lord. Forgive me. From the corner of her eye, she saw the Duke's jaw tighten. But he said nothing more, and the conversation moved on to hunting and politics and other topics from which she was tacitly excluded. Later, when the men retired for brandy and cigars, while she and Helena were dismissed to the drawing room, Eleanor felt the familiar cage closing around her throat. That was well done, Helena murmured as they settled into chairs. You swallowed your pride beautifully. It tasted like ash. Pride often does, darling, but it keeps us alive. Through the window, Eleanor could see the torchlit gardens, the shadows of men moving through them with their drinks and their easy confidence. She wondered what it felt like to occupy space without apology, to speak without calculating every word's weight. The Duke's words echoed in her mind. Own it, if only she could. The second day of the tournament dawned gray and sullen. Rain drummed against the windows, delaying the morning matches and leaving the players restless and confined to the Manor's public rooms. Eleanor had planned to hide in her quarters, but Helena insisted she make an appearance. You can't let them forget you exist, she'd said, or they'll decide you shouldn't. So Eleanor found herself tucked into a corner of the library with a book she wasn't reading, hyper-aware of every sound and movement around her. Tolstoy, she jolted. The Duke stood beside her chair, seemingly materialized from thin air. Up close, he was even more overwhelming, tall enough that she had to crane her neck, looking at her with that unnerving focus that made her feel simultaneously exposed and seen. I'm sorry? He nodded at her book. You're reading Tolstoy. In the original Russian, unless I'm mistaken. Damn. She'd grabbed it without thinking, too used to Helena's library where she could read whatever she wanted. A music tutor's daughter wouldn't have access to. Lady Helena has an extensive collection, she said quickly. She's generous about lending books to her staff. Generous indeed. He moved closer, and she caught that scent again. Bergamot and smoke. Most tutors' daughters I've known can barely read English, let alone Russian literature. I was fortunate in my education. Evidently. He pulled a chair over and sat without invitation, close enough that she could see the faint scar cutting through his left eyebrow. An old wound. She wondered how he'd gotten it. Tell me, Miss Shaw, he said, and his voice was conversational, almost friendly, which somehow made it more dangerous. What does a tutor's daughter do when she's not humiliating dukes at chess? I assist Lady Helena. I read. I play chess when the opportunity arises, and this opportunity arises every summer for 3 years running. Her pulse kicked. Lord Stirling has been kind enough to sponsor my participation. Stirling's kindness is legendary, almost as legendary as his decade-long pursuit of Lady Helena. The Duke's mouth curved. Tell me, does she ever plan to put the poor bastard out of his misery? I wouldn't presume to speculate about Lady Helena's private affairs. Of course not. That would require opinions, and you're far too well behaved for those. He leaned back, studying her like she was a particularly interesting chess problem. Except at the board. There you have opinions. Strong ones. Devastating ones. Chess is different. Is it? Or is chess the only place you're allowed to be honest? The observation landed like a knife between her ribs. Eleanor forced herself to meet his eyes, to keep her expression neutral. Your Grace, I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm implying that you're not who you claim to be. Her blood ran cold. I'm implying, he continued, his voice dropping lower, more intimate, that everything about you, the way you move, the way you speak, your education, your posture, suggests a woman born to a very different life than serving as companion to a tutor's child. That's absurd. Is it? He reached out, and for one heart-stopping moment, she thought he might touch her. Instead, his fingers hovered above her wrist, pointing. You're wearing a ring. Simple gold band, but old. Quality craftsmanship. Family heirloom, I'd wager. Odd thing for a tutor's daughter to possess. She'd forgotten about the ring. Her grandmother's ring, worn so constantly she no longer noticed its weight. It was my mother's, she said, which was true. She died when I was young. I'm sorry. And he sounded it, genuine sympathy softening his features for just a moment. But it doesn't explain why you're here. Why a woman with your obvious intelligence and education would be content to exist in the margins, pretending to be less than she is. Perhaps I'm exactly what I appear to be, and you're seeing complexity where there's only simplicity. No. He said it with absolute certainty. I'm an excellent judge of character, Miss Shaw, and you are many things, but simple isn't one of them. She should leave, should excuse herself and retreat to safety. But something in his tone, not mockery, not threat, but genuine curiosity, kept her rooted. Why does it matter to you? She asked quietly. Because I've never met anyone quite like you. He said it simply, without artifice. Because you beat me at chess and made it look effortless. Because you're wasting your gifts playing for the amusement of men who can't even appreciate what they're witnessing. He paused. And because when I offered to marry you yesterday, you looked at me like I'd offered you a pile of manure. Despite everything, Eleanor felt her lips twitch. You mocked me in front of a room full of men. What reaction did you expect? Fair point. He grinned. A real smile this time, devastating in its warmth. In my defense, I was trying to unsettle you. You were winning far too easily. Perhaps you should simply play better, Your Grace. The words were out before she could stop them. Sharp and clever and entirely un-Margaret Shaw-like. The Duke's eyes lit up with something fierce and delighted. There she is, he murmured. The woman underneath all that careful politeness. Hello. Eleanor's cheeks flamed. I should go. Why? Because you forgot to be boring for 30 seconds? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Stay. Talk to me. Just for a moment. Be whoever you actually are. I don't know what you mean. Liar. The single word hung between them. Not an accusation. An invitation. Eleanor's hands twisted in her lap. Every instinct screamed danger. This man saw too much, asked too many questions, made her want to abandon every careful protection she'd built. But God, it was tempting. To speak freely, just once. To match wits with someone who wouldn't expect her to dim her light. One conversation, she heard herself say, and you stop investigating my supposed secrets. Deal. His smile was wicked, though I reserve the right to draw my own conclusions. You'll draw them regardless. True, but now at least you'll have some influence over the evidence I collect. Despite herself, she laughed. It escaped before she could trap it, genuine and unguarded. The Duke's expression shifted. Something raw and hungry flashed across his features before he controlled it. "That," he said softly, "is the first real sound I've heard you make. Do it again." "I don't perform on command, Your Grace." "Julian." "I beg your pardon?" "My name is Julian. Well, Marcus Julian Ashford, technically, but I've always preferred Julian." He said it firmly. "If we're going to have honest conversation, let's start with names." "That would be inappropriate." "Miss Shaw, you're sitting alone in a library with a notorious bachelor duke, allowing him to interrogate you about your mysteries." His eyes sparkled. "We've already crossed inappropriate. Might as well enjoy the view from here." He had a point, and there was something intoxicating about this. The verbal sparring, the way he looked at her like she was the most interesting thing in the room. Dangerous. So dangerous. "Julian, then," she said, testing the name on her tongue. "Though only here. In public." "In public, you'll call me Your Grace, and I'll pretend not to notice the way your eyes roll when I say something idiotic." He shifted his chair closer. "Tell me about chess. How did you learn?" Safe territory. She could talk about chess without revealing too much. "Lady Helena taught me. She's exceptional." "I've heard Sterling won't shut up about her brilliance. It's actually rather sweet, watching a grown man turn into a lovesick puppy." He paused. "She taught you, and you surpassed her." "I wouldn't say—" "Don't," he cut her off gently. "Remember, no false modesty in this conversation." Eleanor exhaled slowly. "Yes, I surpassed her. Within 2 years, I could beat her almost every time. She says I see the board like a battlefield, 3 moves ahead, calculating probabilities, anticipating responses." "You do. I watched you yesterday." He gestured vaguely toward his own eyes. "They go distant when you're calculating, like you're seeing something the rest of us are blind to." Chess is logic, patterns. If you understand the patterns, the moves become inevitable. Life doesn't work that way. "No," she agreed quietly. "Life is far more complicated." "Is that why you prefer chess? Because it makes sense?" The question pierced something tender. Eleanor looked away, focusing on the rain-streaked windows. "I prefer chess because it's the only place where my intelligence is an asset instead of a liability, where being clever is celebrated instead of suspicious, where I can win and it matters." The confession hung between them, more honest than she'd intended. Julian was quiet for a long moment. "That's desperately sad," he said finally. "That's reality." "Maybe, but it doesn't have to be." He reached out, and this time his fingers did brush her wrist. The lightest touch, there and gone. "You're brilliant, Miss Shaw. Whoever you really are, whatever circumstances brought you here, you're extraordinary. And the fact that you have to hide that to exist in this world is an indictment of everyone who made the rules." Something in Eleanor's chest cracked open. She stared at him. This duke who'd mocked her yesterday and was now saying the most dangerous things imaginable. Dangerous because they made her want to believe them. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think you need to hear it." His expression was serious, almost fierce. "Because in 2 days, I've watched you make yourself smaller to accommodate the egos of lesser men." He stopped, jaw working. "And because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since you wiped the floor with me yesterday. And I'd very much like to know who you are when you're not pretending." Her breath caught. This was a mistake, a terrible, beautiful mistake. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't be that person here. Too much is at risk." "Then be her, with me, just in these moments. Let me see you." It was exactly the wrong thing to say. It was exactly the right thing. Eleanor felt the walls she'd carefully constructed begin to tremble. "One conversation," she heard herself repeat. "Just this once." His smile was soft, almost reverent. Just this once. But they both knew it was a lie. That evening, Eleanor won her scheduled match against a pompous viscount who talked throughout the entire game about his supposed strategies while consistently making obvious mistakes. She beat him in 20 moves, complimented his creative approach, and escaped before he could corner her for another lecture. She was halfway across the club's main hall when she heard the crash. Glass shattering. A man's strangled cry. Eleanor spun toward the noise. Lord Rothbury was on the floor, convulsing. His face had gone purple. Foam flecked his lips. Around him, men stood frozen in shock. "Someone get a doctor!" Lord Sterling's voice cut through the paralysis. He dropped to his knees beside the stricken man, trying to hold him still. Helena appeared at Eleanor's elbow, face pale as chalk. "Dear God!" The doctor arrived within minutes. Lord Harrington kept one on staff during tournaments. He examined Rothbury quickly, his expression grave. "Poison," he announced. "Someone poisoned this man." Chaos erupted. Accusations flew. Men backed away from the refreshment table as if it might explode. "How?" Lord Harrington demanded, face mottled with rage. "When? Who would dare?" "The wine." The doctor pointed to an overturned glass near where Rothbury had fallen. "It's the only thing he consumed." Eleanor's stomach dropped. She looked at the glass. Cut crystal. Distinctive pattern. The same pattern as the glass she'd been served earlier that evening. The same glass she hadn't drunk from yet. She must have made a sound, because suddenly Julian was beside her, his hand gripping her elbow. "That was meant for you," he said quietly, his voice hard as granite. "That was your glass. Rothbury must have taken it by mistake." "You can't know that." "I do know that. I watched the servant pour your wine and set it on that table before you finished your match." His grip tightened. "Someone tried to poison you, Eleanor." Horror washed through her. Someone in this room wanted her gone, badly enough to kill. "Why?" Her voice came out thin. "I've done nothing except—" "You've beaten half the men here. You've made fools of their pride." Julian's eyes scanned the crowd, cold and calculating. "And someone decided you'd embarrass them one too many times." Lord Sterling pushed through the crowd, Helena close behind. His face was thunderous. "Miss Shaw, Your Grace." He looked between them, jaw clenched. "We need to speak privately. Now." They adjourned to a small parlor off the main hall. Lord Rothbury had been carried away, still breathing, but barely. The doctor thought he might survive. The dose hadn't been quite enough to kill a man of his size, but it would have been more than enough for Eleanor. "This ends now," Lord Sterling said flatly. "Miss Shaw, you're withdrawing from the tournament. It's not safe." "No." The word escaped before she could think. "I won't be driven out by some coward who can't accept losing." "You nearly died tonight." "But I didn't, and if I leave now, they win." Her voice shook, but she pressed on. "Whoever did this, they get exactly what they wanted. Better they win than you die." Helena's voice was sharp with fear. "Eleanor, be reasonable." Eleanor. She'd used her real name. In the stress of the moment, the fiction had cracked. Julian's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. "I'm being perfectly reasonable," Eleanor insisted. "I'm the best player here. I've earned my place. I won't be scared away." "Then what do you propose?" Sterling demanded. "We can't have you drinking or eating anything without certainty it's safe. We can't protect you from someone we can't identify." Silence fell. Eleanor's mind raced, calculating options like chess moves. There had to be a way to stay safe and continue playing. There had to be. I'll protect her. All eyes turned to Julian. He stood with his arms crossed, expression set in lines of absolute determination. You, Your Grace? Sterling's skepticism was evident. Yes, me. Julian looked at Eleanor, something fierce burning in his dark eyes. I'll be her shadow for the remainder of the tournament. I'll taste everything she eats or drinks. I'll escort her everywhere. And anyone who wants to try again will have to go through a duke first, which even the stupidest coward might think twice about. That's ridiculous, Eleanor protested. You came here to play chess, not babysit me. I can do both, and frankly, keeping you alive is more important than winning matches. Why? The question burst out before she could stop it. Why would you do this? You barely know me. Julian's jaw worked. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because you're the most interesting person I've met in years. Because watching you play chess is the closest thing to witnessing art I've ever experienced. Because you're brilliant and brave, and you deserve to be here. He paused, holding her gaze. And because the thought of you being hurt makes me want to burn this place to the ground. The raw honesty in his voice stole her breath. Helena and Sterling exchanged significant looks. Well, Helena said slowly, that's certainly protective. This is highly irregular, Sterling added, but he didn't sound entirely opposed. The two of you spending constant time together, it will cause talk. Let them talk. Julian's voice was flat. Miss Shaw's life is more valuable than propriety. Eleanor should refuse, should recognize this for what it was, dangerous, complicated, potentially disastrous for her carefully maintained fiction. But someone had tried to kill her tonight, and Julian was offering her a chance to stay, to keep playing, to not let fear win. On one condition, she heard herself say. You let me teach you. Really teach you, not just play. I'll show you the strategies I use, the patterns I see. In exchange for your protection. His eyes lit up. Deal. Though that seems weighted in my favor. I get to spend extensive time with you and improve my chess simultaneously. I'm sure you'll find other ways to suffer. I'll do my best. His smile was wicked. So, shall we start now? Someone just tried to poison you. Seems like a good time for a private chess lesson, where I can ensure your safety. Despite everything, the fear, the shock, the shaking in her hands, Eleanor laughed. She was in so much trouble. They set up a board in Helena's private sitting room, away from curious eyes. Julian insisted on preparing the tea himself, checking every cup and saucer for tampering. Paranoid, Eleanor observed. Careful, he corrected, settling into the chair across from her. There's a difference. The chess pieces stood between them like soldiers awaiting orders. Eleanor arranged them with automatic precision, her mind still whirling from the evening's events. Who do you think did it? She asked quietly. Someone with access to the refreshment area. Someone who knew which glass was yours. Julian's expression darkened. Someone who's lost to you and can't stomach the humiliation. That could be half the men here. Exactly, which is why we need to be smart about this. He moved a pawn forward. We investigate while you play. Watch for reactions, inconsistencies. Someone will slip. You sound like you've done this before. I haven't, but I'm very good at reading people. He gestured to the board. Your move. And while we play, tell me about your family. Eleanor froze. Why? Because I want to know you. Because we're going to be spending significant time together, and I'd like to understand who I'm protecting. His eyes found hers. Because Lady Helena called you Eleanor earlier, and that's not the name you gave me. There it was, the secret, partially exposed. Eleanor's hands trembled as she moved her knight. I can't tell you everything. Then tell me what you can. His voice was gentle. I won't betray your confidence. Whatever you're hiding, whatever circumstances brought you here, it's safe with me. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. My real name is Eleanor Price, she said quietly, the words feeling like stepping off a cliff. I'm not Lady Helena's tutor's daughter. I'm the daughter of a country gentleman. Respectable family. Modest means. She took a shaky breath. Every summer, my brother and I stay with our aunt in London for the season. She's married well. Lady Helena is her closest friend. That's how I came to be here. Julian processed this, his expression unreadable. And your father doesn't know about the chess. He'd be horrified. He expects me to make an advantageous match, to be the kind of daughter who brings honor to the family name. Not, she gestured at the board. This. Being brilliant at chess dishonors him? Being anything but ornamental dishonors him. The bitterness leaked through despite her control. I'm supposed to watercolor, play simple tunes, agree with whatever men say, and gracefully accept whatever future he arranges for me. That sounds like a special kind of hell. It is. She captured one of his pawns. Lady Helena showed me there could be another way, that women could have minds, opinions, freedom. Lord Stirling got me into the tournament, and for 3 summers, I've had these weeks where I could be more. So you created Margaret Shaw. A necessary fiction. The daughter of a tutor has less to lose than the daughter of a gentleman. And if anyone discovered your real identity, my reputation would be destroyed. My family would suffer the scandal. Eleanor's voice caught. And I would never play again. Julian was quiet for a long moment. Eleanor, he said finally, and somehow her real name on his lips made her pulse race. May I call you that, when we're alone? If you must. I must. He captured her bishop, a small victory. And you should know, I don't care about your father's expectations. I don't care about society's rules regarding what women should or shouldn't be able to do. I care that you're here. You're extraordinary. And someone tried to hurt you tonight. Why does that matter to you? She asked again. Really? You could have walked away. Let Lord Stirling handle this. Why volunteer to be my constant shadow? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because yesterday you looked at me like I was a problem to be solved. Not a title, not a prize, just an opponent standing between you and victory. His voice roughened. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Everyone I meet sees Duke first, Julian, distant second. I see both. The words escaped before she could stop them. The Duke is powerful, confident, used to winning. She moved her queen. Julian is curious, clever, and doesn't like losing. Check. He smiled, studying the board. And which do you prefer? The Duke is useful for protection, but Julian is the one I'm teaching chess to. Good answer. He countered her check, but she'd already seen the trap. So, he said slowly, we've established you're hiding your identity. I'm protecting you from would-be poisoners. And we're both pretending this is solely about chess instruction. His eyes found hers. What else would it be about? Eleanor. He said her name like a prayer and a curse. You're not stupid. You know exactly what this is about. Her throat went dry. I don't. You beat me at chess, and I couldn't stop thinking about you. You gave me that razor-sharp response yesterday, and I wanted to hear every thought in that brilliant mind. You spoke honestly to me this afternoon, and I... He stopped, jaw clenched. I haven't felt this intrigued by another person in years. Possibly ever. You're attracted to me because I'm a challenge, she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Once you solve the puzzle, the interest will fade. Is that what you think? It's what I know. Men like you, powerful men, men with options, you want what resists you. The moment I become easy, available, understood, I'm no longer interesting. He leaned back, studying her with that unsettling intensity. You have a low opinion of my character. I have a realistic opinion of human nature. Then let me be unrealistic for a moment. He reached across the board, and before she could stop him, his fingers covered hers. I'm attracted to you because you're brilliant, because you speak your mind when you feel safe, because you play chess like you're conducting a symphony, and watching you think is the most compelling thing I've ever witnessed. His touch burned. She should pull away, should remember every rule she'd set for herself about keeping distance, staying safe, protecting her heart. This can't go anywhere, she whispered. Even if there's something here, it can't become anything. You're a duke. I'm nobody. You're Eleanor Price, the finest chess player in England. That makes you somebody to me. Julian, I'm not asking for forever. I'm not asking you to give up your freedom or your chess or anything you value. His thumb traced the back of her hand, devastating in its gentleness. I'm asking for this week, for honest conversations and chess lessons, and time where we both stop pretending. Everything in her screamed danger. This man saw too much, made her want too much. If she let him in even a little, she'd only make the inevitable ending more painful. But God, she was tired of being careful. Tired of swallowing every true thing she wanted to say. 1 week, she heard herself agree. We investigate who tried to poison me. You protect me during the tournament. I teach you chess. And when this is over? When this is over? We go back to our lives. No strings, no expectations, no promises. Just this stolen time where we get to be fully ourselves. It was a terrible idea, potentially disastrous. She should say no. Checkmate, she said instead, moving her queen into final position. You were so distracted by words, you stopped watching the board. Julian laughed, surprised, delighted, genuine. You're going to make me suffer for this, aren't you? Every moment. She stood, pulling her hand from his. Now, I believe we have some poisoning to investigate. Where do we start? His expression shifted, becoming sharp and focused. We start by figuring out who had access to that wine glass. He rose, moving toward the door. And then? His smile turned predatory. We make them very, very sorry they ever crossed you. Eleanor felt an answering smile curve her lips, fierce and entirely unladylike. She was still in trouble, but now at least she had an ally. The next morning, Eleanor found Julian waiting outside her door at an hour that should have been illegal. Did you sleep? She asked, letting him fall into step beside her. Some. Did you? Not much. The truth was, she'd lain awake for hours, replaying their conversation, questioning every decision. Someone had tried to kill her, and instead of running, she'd agreed to spend every waking moment with a man who made her feel things she couldn't afford to feel. I kept thinking about the poison, she admitted as they walked toward the breakfast room. Who would risk it? The scandal if they're caught. Suggests someone desperate, Julian finished. Or arrogant enough to believe they won't be caught. He pulled a small notebook from his coat pocket. I've been making a list. 7 men have lost to you multiple times this tournament. 5 of them lost significant wagers on those matches. You think it's about money? Money, pride, or both. Men do stupid things when their egos are bruised and their purses are lighter. He flipped open the notebook as they entered the breakfast room, his voice dropping. Lord Rothbury himself was on the list, but obviously he's eliminated as a suspect, given he's the one who ended up poisoned. How is he? Alive, recovering slowly. The doctor says he'll likely survive, but it was near enough. Julian's expression hardened. Which means whoever did this is either extremely lucky that their dose miscalculated or didn't actually intend to kill, just incapacitate. Scaring me away would be enough. Exactly. They found a quiet corner, and Julian insisted on selecting her breakfast himself, tasting each item before allowing her to eat. It should have felt ridiculous. Instead, it felt oddly intimate, this man putting himself between her and danger without hesitation. Today's matches start at noon, he said, settling across from her. Until then, I propose we do some investigating. How? By being observant, watching reactions when we're together, seeing who seems nervous, guilty, or overly interested in your well-being. He leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. And by very publicly establishing that you have a Duke's protection. That alone might make our poisoner think twice about trying again. You want to make a spectacle of us. I want to make it clear that harming you means answering to me. His tone left no room for interpretation. Eleanor should have been horrified. The attention, the speculation it would cause. Instead, she felt something warm unfurl in her chest. Protected, defended, seen. Dangerous feelings, all of them. Acceptable, she agreed. Though Lady Helena will have opinions about propriety. Lady Helena, said the woman herself, appearing at their table with her usual impeccable timing, has opinions about survival overriding propriety. She fixed Julian with a pointed look as she sat down. If His Grace wants to parade around as your guardian, I'm hardly going to object. Though I will note that protecting someone and compromising them are dangerously close concepts, Your Grace. I have no intention of compromising Miss Price. See that you don't. She has enough challenges without adding ruined reputation to the list. Helena poured herself tea with elegant precision. Now, have you two brilliant strategists formed an actual plan, or are you just making eyes at each other? Eleanor's cheeks flamed. We are not. Please, I'm old, not blind. Helena's smile was knowing. You, child, look at him like he's a particularly complex chess problem, and he looks at you like he's starving, and you're the only meal in sight. It's all very dramatic. Julian didn't even have the grace to look embarrassed. Lord Sterling said you have a talent for cutting through nonsense. Among other talents. Speaking of which, Helena set down her cup. Geoffrey and I have been making inquiries of our own. It seems your poisoner may have shown their hand in another way. Eleanor leaned forward. How? 3 days ago, before the tournament began, someone was overheard at White's making rather vicious comments about women playing chess, specifically about how certain women needed to learn their place. Helena's eyes glittered. The speaker was Lord Bartholomew Crane. You beat him twice last summer, Eleanor. He lost 50 pounds on the second match. Julian's expression went cold. Crane. I should have thought of him. He's known for holding grudges. There's more. Yesterday afternoon, around the time the wine was poured, several servants saw a gentleman matching Crane's description loitering near the refreshment area. He claimed he was looking for a specific vintage. Helena paused. But no one recalls him actually taking any wine. That's damning, Eleanor breathed. But not proof. No, unfortunately not. Julian was already rising from his chair. But it's enough to confront him. Carefully. Confronting a suspected poisoner seems unwise, Eleanor protested. Not confronting. Observing. Applying pressure. He looked back at her, something fierce in his expression. You have a match against Crane today, don't you? She checked the schedule in her mind. At 2 o'clock. Perfect. I'll be there, highly visible, making it very clear that any attempt to harm you will be met with immediate consequences. His smile was sharp. And we'll see how he reacts to having a witness who won't look away. The match against Lord Crane took place in the club's main hall, with a dozen other games happening simultaneously around them. But their table drew a crowd. Word had spread about the poisoning, about the Duke's protection, about the scandalous woman who played like a master. Eleanor felt their stares like weights on her skin. Lord Crane sat across from her, his expression carefully neutral. He was perhaps 45, still handsome in a dissolute way, with a kind of mouth that looked cruel even when smiling. "Miss Shaw," he said pleasantly, "shall we begin?" Julian stood behind her chair, a silent but unmistakable presence. She'd protested the positioning, called it too obvious, too intimate. He'd been immovable. "If Crane is our poisoner," he'd said, "I want him to know exactly what stands between him and trying again." Now, as they arranged their pieces, Eleanor watched Crane's face for any sign of guilt or fear. Nothing. He looked bored, if anything. "Terrible business yesterday," Crane said, moving his first pawn. "Poor Rothbury. I hear he's expected to recover." "The doctor believes so," Eleanor countered with her opening. "Though it was a near thing." "Indeed. Makes one wonder what kind of monster would poison a guest at a gentleman's tournament." His eyes flicked up to hers. "I hope you're being careful, Miss Shaw. Clearly someone in our midst has unsavory inclinations." The concern sounded genuine. Too genuine. "I'm well protected," she said quietly. "His Grace has been kind enough to ensure my safety." "How gallant!" Crane's gaze shifted to Julian, something unreadable passing across his features. Though some might say a duke playing nursemaid to a tutor's daughter is beneath his station. Behind her, Eleanor felt Julian tense. She spoke before he could. "Some might say attempting murder is beneath any station. Yet here we are." The words hung in the air like smoke. Crane's hand paused over his knight. "Are you implying something, Miss Shaw?" "I'm observing that cowardice takes many forms, some more lethal than others." She moved her bishop. "Your turn, my lord." For just a moment, fury flashed across his face, raw and undisguised. Then it vanished behind that bland mask. "You speak rather boldly for someone in your position." "And what position is that? Alive? Competent at chess? Both seem perfectly acceptable positions to me." A few spectators laughed. Crane's jaw tightened, but he made his move. Too aggressive, too hasty, emotional. They played in tense silence for several moves. Eleanor could feel the coiled energy radiating from Julian behind her, ready to strike at any provocation. The crowd watched with breathless attention, sensing drama beyond the chessboard. "You've made quite a name for yourself," Crane said finally, his tone conversational. 3 years of victories. Impressive for someone so young. So inexperienced." "Experience is relative," Eleanor replied, capturing his knight. "I've found that intelligence and study often surpass years of mediocre practice." Another flash of anger, another hasty move. She had him. Not just in the game, in his self-control. He was unraveling, showing her exactly what she needed to know. This was the man who'd tried to kill her. "Tell me," Julian said suddenly, his voice cutting through the tension. "Lord Crane, where were you yesterday evening? Around the time the wine was poured?" Crane's gaze snapped up to the Duke. "I beg your pardon?" "Simple question. Lady Helena mentioned seeing you near the refreshments. I wondered if you'd noticed anything suspicious." "I don't recall being near the refreshments at all." But his eye twitched. The smallest tell. "Strange," Julian continued, his tone remaining pleasant, conversational. Deadly. Multiple servants remember you there. Looking for a particular vintage, they said. I may have been. I enjoy wine. It's hardly criminal. Of course not. Though poisoning someone certainly is. Julian leaned forward slightly. If you noticed anything, anyone tampering with glasses, acting strangely, I'm sure you'd want to report it, being a man of honor and all. The threat was delicate, but unmistakable. Crane's knuckles whitened on the edge of the table. I noticed nothing, and I resent the implication. No implication, just gathering information. Julian straightened, his hand coming to rest on the back of Eleanor's chair. A possessive gesture that made the crowd murmur. We all want to find the culprit, don't we? To ensure nothing like this happens again. Naturally. They finished the game in bitter silence. Eleanor won easily, inevitably. Crane's anger had made him sloppy, predictable. When she declared checkmate, he stood so abruptly his chair scraped across the floor. Well played, Miss Shaw. His voice was tight as a wound spring. Perhaps next time you'll face a more worthy opponent. Perhaps next time you'll play without trying to murder your competition first. The crowd gasped. Crane went white, then red. You dare! I dare many things, my lord, including calling cowardice by its name. She stood, meeting his gaze without flinching. Good day. Julian's hand found her elbow, guiding her away before Crane could respond. Behind them, the crowd erupted in whispers. That was reckless, Julian murmured as they walked. That was necessary. You saw his face. He's guilty. I saw his face. So did everyone else. Which means he now knows we suspect him. They turned into a quiet corridor. He'll either retreat in fear or escalate out of desperation. Then we'll be ready for either. Julian pulled her into an alcove, his expression serious. Eleanor, I need you to understand something. Men like Crane, when they're cornered, they become dangerous. You backed him into a corner in front of witnesses. His pride won't recover from that. Good. Let him suffer. I'm trying to keep you safe, and you're deliberately provoking the man who tried to kill you. I'm making it clear I won't be intimidated. She lifted her chin. Would you prefer I cower? I prefer you alive. His hands came up to frame her face, the touch sending electricity through her veins. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you won't take any unnecessary risks. I promise I won't drink or eat anything you haven't tested first. Beyond that, she shrugged. I came here to play chess, Julian. I won't stop living because someone wants me dead. He stared at her for a long moment, something fierce and frustrated burning in his eyes. You're going to drive me absolutely mad, aren't you? Probably. Consider it practice for your patience. My patience, he muttered, is not the problem. But he didn't let go of her face. His thumbs traced her cheekbones with devastating gentleness, and for a breathless moment, she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he stepped back, putting proper distance between them. Tonight, after dinner, meet me in Lady Helena's sitting room. We need to plan our next move against Crane. Against whoever tries to hurt you next. His jaw set in hard lines, because now that he knows we're watching, he'll try something different. Something we won't anticipate. A chill traced Eleanor's spine, but she refused to show fear. Then we'll anticipate everything, she said firmly. Come prepared for a long evening. I have several strategies to teach you. His expression shifted, humor breaking through the tension. I look forward to it. That night, Eleanor found Julian already in the sitting room, a chessboard set up and a cold supper laid out. Every dish, he explained, he'd either prepared himself or watched being prepared. You didn't have to go to this trouble, she said, settling across from him. I told you, I'm not taking chances. He pushed a plate toward her. Eat. You barely touched anything at dinner. I wasn't hungry. Liar. You were nervous about being in a room full of suspects. He speared a piece of chicken with his fork, ate it demonstratively. There, verified safe. Now eat. She obeyed, discovering she was actually starving. They ate in companionable silence, the tension of the day slowly easing. Tell me about your brother, Julian said eventually. Philip, wasn't it? Eleanor stiffened. What about him? Lady Helena mentioned he's also in London this summer. Does he know about the chess? God, no. She set down her fork. Philip he's a good man, loves me, wants what's best for me. But he's also conventional to his bones. He'd see this as shameful, dangerous. He'd try to stop me, to protect me. From what? Excellence? From scandal, from choices he believes will harm me. She moved a chess piece absently. He means well. They all mean well. My father, my brother, even my aunt in her way. They want me safe and settled and proper. They don't understand that their vision of safety feels like suffocation. What do you want? Julian asked quietly. If you could have anything, complete freedom to choose your life, what would you want? The question pierced something deep. Eleanor stared at the board, thinking. I want to play chess. Not just in secret, but openly. I want to be respected for my mind instead of diminished because of my sex. I want conversations that challenge me, not vapid pleasantries about weather and needlework. She looked up, meeting his eyes. I want to wake up every day and feel fully alive, not half dead from pretending. Then that's what you should have. Julian, be realistic. Women like me don't get those things. We get marriages if we're lucky, loneliness if we're not, spinsterhood if we refuse both. What if there was another option? Her heart kicked. What option? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. What if you could keep playing? What if someone with enough influence ensured you had a place in the chess world, regardless of your sex? Someone like a duke. It would look like I was your mistress. The words fell between them like stones. Julian's jaw worked. I won't lie and say there wouldn't be talk. There would be. Vicious, ugly talk. Then why suggest it? Because the alternative is watching you dim your light to survive. His voice roughened. And I can't stomach that. Not when there's another way. A way that destroys my reputation and makes me dependent on your favor. She stood, pacing to the window. I appreciate the thought, Julian, truly. But I won't trade one cage for another, no matter how gilded. Silence. Then his footsteps coming up behind her. You're right, he said quietly. I'm sorry. That was thoughtless of me. It was kind of you. Misguided, but kind. She turned to face him. This is why it can't be more than this week. You're a duke. You think in terms of power and patronage and protection. I'm just trying to survive with my autonomy intact. You're not just anything, Eleanor. His voice was low, intense. You're extraordinary. And you deserve a world that recognizes that without requiring you to become someone's possession in exchange. The words lodged in her throat like tears. That world doesn't exist. Then perhaps we should create it. Julian, I know. 1 week. No strings. No futures. His hand lifted, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. But for this week, let me imagine better. Let me pretend we could build something where you're free and I'm worthy of you. You don't need to be worthy of me. You're a duke. And you're the woman who beat me at chess and made me question everything I thought I knew about intelligence, courage, and what matters. His thumb traced her jaw. Title means nothing compared to that. She should step back, should remember all the reasons this was impossible. Instead, she swayed forward, closing the distance between them. "This is a mistake," she whispered. "Probably." His breath ghosted across her lips. "Are you going to stop me?" "I should." "But will you?" She answered by rising on her toes and kissing him. It was soft at first, tentative, testing. Then his arms came around her, and the gentleness shattered into something desperate and consuming. He kissed like he played chess, strategic, focused, devastating. When they finally pulled apart, both unsteady, Eleanor's head was spinning. "Still a mistake?" Julian asked roughly. "Absolutely." But she was smiling, though perhaps a worthwhile one. "I'll accept that compromise." He rested his forehead against hers. "We should probably talk about what this means." "It means we have 4 more days of the tournament. 4 more days where we can be honest with each other. And then? Then we go back to reality." "Yes." He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "I don't like that plan." "Neither do I, but it's the only one that doesn't end in disaster." She stepped out of his arms, putting necessary distance between them. "Now, teach me something about you. It's only fair since you've extracted all my secrets." Julian was quiet for a moment. Then he moved to the window, shoulders tense. "There's something you should know. I wasn't entirely honest earlier. When I said I came here to play chess, that's not the only reason." Eleanor's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "My father died 6 months ago. I inherited the title, the estates, the responsibilities, and along with them, the expectations." He turned back to face her. "Every mother with a marriageable daughter has been throwing her at me since the funeral. Every fortune hunter, every social climber. They see a young duke, and they smell opportunity." "That must be exhausting." "It's suffocating. I came here to escape it. To have 1 week where I was just Julian, playing chess, free from the marriage market." He laughed bitterly. "And then I met you, and suddenly freedom felt like the loneliest thing in the world." Eleanor's throat ached. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I understand why you want autonomy, why you fear becoming someone's possession. Because I'm living the flip side of that, being the possession everyone wants to claim." He crossed back to her, taking her hands. "And I'm saying that what we have, these stolen moments where we're both just ourselves, it's the realest thing I've felt in months." She squeezed his fingers. "Then let's not waste it on what we can't have. Let's just be here, fully present, for these 4 days. And after?" "After, we'll survive. We're both good at that." He pulled her close, and she let herself lean into his strength. Just for a moment. Just while they could pretend the world didn't exist beyond this room. "Teach me something," he said finally. "Show me that brilliant mind at work." So she did. They played chess until the candles burned low. Between moves, she taught him to see patterns he'd never noticed, to think probabilistically, to anticipate not just the next move, but the cascade of consequences that followed. And if their hands touched more than necessary, if their eyes held longer than proper, well, they had 4 more days to be reckless. After that, they'd be sensible. The next 2 days passed in a blur of chess matches, whispered conversations, and mounting tension. Crane avoided Eleanor entirely, but his allies began circling. They made pointed comments in the hallways. They spread rumors about her relationship with the Duke. They watched her with eyes that promised retribution. "She's using her feminine wiles," Eleanor overheard Lord Harrington say during lunch on the 4th day. "Distracting His Grace from his matches. It's unseemly." Julian had actually laughed when she told him. "If you're distracting me, It's by being a better player than anyone else here. My performance has improved since studying your strategies." But the damage was being done. The other men watched them with speculation and resentment. The fiction of Margaret Shaw was fracturing under scrutiny, and Eleanor could feel the ground shifting beneath her feet. On the fourth afternoon, she faced off against a quiet baron who'd always been respectful, even in defeat. They played a solid technical game. No theatrics, no crowd. Midway through, the baron leaned forward. "You should withdraw," he said quietly, "before this gets worse." Eleanor's hand paused over her knight. "I beg your pardon?" "Crane's been talking, building alliances." The baron's expression was pained. "He's convinced several men that your presence here is inappropriate, that Lord Stirling's patronage and the Duke's protection are evidence of moral corruption." Eleanor's blood ran cold. "They want me banned?" "From future tournaments. They need 10 signatures to force Harrington's hand. They have 7 so far." "They can't do that." "They can if enough powerful men agree, and Crane is very persuasive when he wants to be." The Baron moved his rook. "I'm telling you this as a kindness. Whatever scandal you're courting with Gravenmore, it's not worth losing your place here." Eleanor felt her world tilting. This was supposed to be safe, her one refuge, and now they were trying to take it away because she dared to be excellent? "Thank you for the warning," she managed, "but I won't withdraw." "Then be careful, very careful." The Baron's voice dropped even lower. "Men like Crane don't stop at poisoning. They destroy reputations, livelihoods, futures. And you," he gestured vaguely, "you're vulnerable in ways the Duke isn't." She won the match, but the victory tasted like ash. That evening she told Julian everything. His fury was immediate and volcanic. "They're going to ruin you for being better than them, for making them look foolish, for existing in their space." He paced Helena's sitting room like a caged wolf. "I'll go to Harrington. I'll threaten to withdraw my patronage from the entire tournament if they even think about—" "That will only make it worse," Eleanor interrupted. "They'll see it as proof that I'm using you, that I'm corrupt." "I don't care what they think." "But I do." She caught his arm, stopping his pacing. "Julian, my reputation is all I have. If I lose that, I lose everything. Not just chess, any hope of a decent future." He stared at her, jaw working. Then he said the words that changed everything. "Marry me." Eleanor's heart stopped. "What?" "Marry me. If you're my Duchess, they can't touch you. They can't ban you or ruin you or—" "Stop!" She stepped back, shaking. "You can't mean that." "I'm completely serious." "You're being ridiculous. We've known each other 5 days." "People marry for far worse reasons than genuine admiration and intellectual compatibility." He closed the distance between them. "Eleanor, I care about you. I respect you. I want you safe. If marriage accomplishes that, marriage accomplishes making me your property." Her voice cracked. "Making every victory of mine become yours by extension. Making me lose myself entirely." Julian recoiled as if she'd struck him. "That's what you think I'm offering? A cage? Isn't it?" She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. "You're a duke, Julian. Even if you mean well, even if you genuinely care, you have power over me in every way that matters. As your wife, I'd be yours. Legally, socially, completely. I would never, you wouldn't mean to, but it would happen anyway because that's how the world works." Tears burned her eyes. "Maybe you'd let me play chess. Maybe you'd encourage it. But it would always be your permission, your allowance, your grace granting me favors. And I can't—" Her voice broke. "I can't survive being property again, even willingly given property." Silence fell between them, heavy and achy. "I'm sorry," Julian said finally, his voice rough. "You're right. I wasn't thinking about what you need, only about fixing the problem." He ran a hand through his hair. "As if you're a problem to be fixed, rather than a person with agency." "I know you meant well." "Meaning well isn't enough." He looked at her with something like despair. "So, what do we do? How do I help without taking away your choices?" Eleanor's mind raced, calculating strategies and consequences like chess moves. "We finish the tournament. We identify Crane's allies and undermine their coalition. We make it clear that banning me would mean losing significant patronage, not just yours, but Lord Sterling's, potentially others." She straightened her shoulders. "And we let the chess speak for itself. If I keep winning, keep proving my worth, they can't dismiss me as easily." "And if they ban you anyway?" "Then I find another way, another tournament, another opportunity." She met his eyes.
I'm good at surviving, Julian. I've been doing it my whole life.
He looked at her with something like awe. "You're extraordinary." "I'm stubborn. There's a difference." "No, you're extraordinary." He crossed to her, taking her hands. "And for what it's worth, I'm sorry I tried to solve this with power instead of partnership. Tell me what you need from me." "Keep being you. Keep watching my back. Keep teaching me that not all powerful men are threats." She squeezed his fingers. "And when this is over, let me go without making me feel guilty for choosing freedom." Pain flickered across his face. "You're really going to walk away at the end of this?" "We both agreed." "I know what we agreed. Doesn't make it easier." He pulled her close, and she let herself melt into his embrace. "4 days ago, I thought I wanted freedom," he murmured against her hair. "Now I think I just wanted you." Her eyes burned. "Don't say things like that." "Why not? It's true." "Because it makes everything harder." She pulled back to look at him. "Julian, we can't do this. We can't build something real in 5 days and expect it to survive the world beyond here." "Why not?" "Because you're a duke who needs to marry well and produce heirs, and I'm a woman who wants to play chess and choose her own life. Those things don't coexist." "They could, if we let them." "No, they can't." She stepped out of his arms, wrapping herself in resolve. "We have 1 more day of matches. Let's focus on that, on keeping me safe, on winning." "And after?" "We'll face it when it comes." He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he nodded slowly. 1 more day. Then the final matches." "Then the final matches," she agreed. Neither of them mentioned what came after. The tournament's final day arrived with sharp, brilliant sunshine, a cruel contrast to the storm building inside Eleanor. She awoke with her stomach in knots, knowing she faced her most important matches yet. But first, she had to implement her plan. She found Lord Sterling in the breakfast room, looking grim. "I heard," he said without preamble. "Crane's coalition. They're planning to present a formal petition to Harrington after the final matches, requesting your ban from future tournaments." "How many signatures?" 7 so far. They need 10 to force Harrington's hand." "Then we have to ensure they don't get 10. Eleanor sat across from him, her mind working through angles. "Who's wavering? Who might be convinced to refuse signing?" They spent an hour strategizing, identifying targets. Sterling would speak to some. Helena would charm others. Julian would deploy the subtle threat of a duke's disapproval. It was manipulation, pure and simple. Eleanor hated it, but she hated the alternative more. The morning matches went by in a blur.
She won 2,
Drew a third when her opponent played defensively. By afternoon, only 4 players remained in contention for the tournament's top honors: herself, Julian, Crane, and the young Viscount who'd surprised everyone with his strategic prowess. The semifinals would determine the final match. Eleanor drew the Viscount. Julian drew Crane. She could barely focus on her own game, too aware of the battle happening across the room. Julian and Crane faced each other like generals at war, every move weighted with history and hatred. "Your move, Miss Shaw." She jolted back to her own board. The Viscount watched her with concerned eyes. "Forgive me," she murmured, making her move. "Distracted." "Understandable." He nodded toward Julian and Crane's table. "That match feels like it's about more than chess." "It is." She forced herself to concentrate, to play the board in front of her instead of watching the drama unfold elsewhere. The Viscount was good.
better than she'd anticipated.
He'd learned from watching her, adapted his strategies. It took her 40 moves to secure victory. When she did, she immediately looked toward the other match. Julian and Crane were locked in what looked like a death match. Both their faces were tight with concentration and fury. The room had gone silent, everyone watching. Crane moved his queen, an aggressive play that opened his defense. Julian stared at the board, jaw working. Then he moved his rook. Check. Crane's eyes widened. He studied the board frantically, looking for escape. There was none. "Checkmate," Julian said quietly. The room erupted. Sterling's booming laugh cut through the noise. Helena applauded elegantly. And Crane sat frozen, staring at the board as if he couldn't quite believe what had happened. "Well played, Your Grace," he said finally, his voice strangled. Julian didn't respond. He simply stood and walked directly to Eleanor, his expression blazing with triumph and relief. "We're in the finals," he said. "You and me." Her stomach dropped. "What?" "Tomorrow, final match of the tournament. You against me." His smile was fierce. "Winner takes all." Around them, excited chatter rose. The finest player in the tournament against the Duke. A tutor's daughter against nobility. The woman who'd nearly been poisoned against the man who'd protected her. It was perfect drama, perfect tension, and Eleanor suddenly knew exactly what she had to do. That night, she lay awake for hours, her plan crystallizing into terrible certainty. She would lose on purpose. Not obviously. That would insult Julian and raise suspicion. But carefully, subtly, making choices that gave him openings, letting him win by narrow margins so it looked like a genuine defeat. She had to lose, because winning would make everything worse. Crane's coalition would point to her victory as proof that she was a threat, an aberration, something that needed to be eliminated. But if she lost, especially to a duke, especially to Julian, she'd validate the natural order. She'd prove she knew her place. Lose gracefully. Become safe again. Maybe they'd let her come back next year. The plan tasted like poison in her mouth, but survival always did. She didn't tell Julian. Couldn't tell him. He'd argue. Try to change her mind. Maybe even threaten to throw the match himself. Number. This had to be her choice, her sacrifice. The next morning, she dressed carefully in her simplest dress. Margaret Shaw one final time, proper and grateful and unthreatening. Julian found her before the match, pulling her aside into a quiet corner. "Are you ready?" he asked. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Good, because I'm not going to go easy on you." His smile was competitive, warm. "I want to beat you at your best. No mercy." I wouldn't expect anything less. The lie tasted like copper. He kissed her then, quick and sweet and devastating. Win or lose, Eleanor, this has been the most alive I've felt in years. Thank you for that. Her throat closed. Julian, I know. 1 week. No promises. He squeezed her hand. But that doesn't make it less true. Then they were walking into the main hall, and it was too late to say anything else. The crowd was enormous. Word had spread about the final match, and it seemed every member of the club who could attend had shown up. Lord Harrington presided over the arrangement with barely contained excitement. "Gentlemen," he announced, though his eyes found Eleanor, "and Miss Shaw, welcome to the final match of this year's tournament, the Duke of Thornbury against our most unusual competitor. May the best player win." They took their seats, the familiar ritual of arranging pieces, choosing colors. Julian won the draw for white, giving him first move.
Good luck, he said quietly.
You too, she whispered. And the match began. For the first dozen moves, Eleanor played her best. She couldn't help it. Muscle memory, instinct, the pure joy of the game taking over. She and Julian traded pieces, maneuvered for position, tested each other's defenses. The crowd watched in breathless silence. Then, at move 15, Eleanor made her choice. She moved her bishop, a defensive position, when she should have attacked. It left her vulnerable to Julian's knight, sacrificing control of the center board. Julian frowned, studying the move. He had to see it was wrong. Had to recognize she could have done better. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. "Quite sure." He moved his knight, capitalizing on her mistake. And just like that, the momentum shifted. Over the next 20 moves, Eleanor slowly, carefully allowed Julian to dismantle her position. Nothing obvious. Each mistake looked plausible, a miscalculation, an overlooked consequence. But together, they added up to inevitable defeat. She could see the confusion in Julian's eyes, could see him trying to understand why she was playing beneath herself. But he kept playing to win, just as she'd known he would. At move 42, Eleanor moved her queen into a position that left her king exposed. Julian studied the board, his expression tight. "Eleanor," he murmured, too quiet for anyone else to hear. "What are you doing?" "Playing chess, Your Grace." "No, you're letting me win." Her pulse hammered. "I'm simply playing. If you see a winning move, I suggest you take it." He stared at her for a long moment. She held his gaze, silently begging him to understand, to let her do this. Finally, he moved his rook. Check. 3 moves later, checkmate. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Lord Harrington's voice boomed congratulations. Men clapped Julian on the shoulder, celebrating the return of natural order. A duke triumphing over a woman who'd gotten above herself. Eleanor stood, curtsied gracefully. "Well played, Your Grace. You were the better player today." Julian's face was a mask, unreadable, but his eyes burned with something like betrayal. "Thank you, Miss Shaw. You played admirably." She fled before he could say anything else, before the crowd could trap her in their celebration. Helena caught up with her in the corridor, face pale. "What did you do?" "What I had to." "You threw the match. You let him win." "I ensured my survival." Eleanor's voice cracked. "Crane's petition, the coalition. If I'd won, Helena, they would have destroyed me. But this way, you've destroyed yourself differently." Helena grabbed her shoulders. "That man cares for you, and you just lied to him in the most fundamental way possible. He'll forgive me, eventually, once he understands why." "Will he? Or will he see it as proof that you don't trust him, that you'd rather sacrifice your integrity than accept his help?" Eleanor's knees buckled. Helena caught her, guiding her to a bench against the wall. "I did what I thought was right," Eleanor whispered. "I know, darling. But sometimes doing what we think is right is just another way of being afraid." Eleanor sat there, shaking, while the applause continued in the hall beyond. She'd saved her reputation, secured her future at the tournaments. So why did it feel like she'd lost everything that mattered? She avoided Julian for the rest of the day. It wasn't hard. He was occupied with victory celebrations, formal dinners, speeches, and she was just Margaret Shaw again, invisible at the margins. That evening, as she packed her things for departure the next morning, someone knocked on her door. Lord Stirling stood in the corridor, his expression grave. "We need to talk," he said. "Your brother is here." Her blood turned to ice. "What?" "Philip Price arrived an hour ago. He's heard rumors about a woman matching your description playing in a men's tournament. He's furious, demanding explanations." Stirling's face was sympathetic. "I'm sorry, Eleanor. I tried to intercept him, but he insisted on seeing his sister immediately." This was it. The disaster she'd always feared. Discovery. Scandal. The end of everything. "Where is he?" "Lady Helena's sitting room. I've kept him contained there, but he's not patient." Stirling hesitated. "And the Duke is with him." Gravenmore insisted. Of course he did. Even angry, even betrayed, Julian was still trying to protect her. Eleanor smoothed her skirts, lifted her chin. Whatever came next, she'd face it directly. She walked into the sitting room to find Philip pacing like a trapped animal, Julian standing near the window with crossed arms, and Helena perched in a chair with her usual unflappable composure.
"Philip,"
Eleanor said quietly. Her brother spun toward her. He was 26, responsible and conventional, convinced he knew what was best for everyone. Right now, he looked ready to explode. "Eleanor, tell me it isn't true." "What isn't true?" "That you've been playing chess in a men's tournament under a false name. For years." Each word was bitten off sharply. "Tell me the rumors I've heard are vicious lies." She met his eyes. "I can't tell you that." Philip's face went white. "My God, you really... How could you? Do you have any idea what this means? The scandal, if anyone discovers, Father would be devastated. Our family's name would survive," Eleanor interrupted, "the same way it survives everything else." "You don't understand what you've done, what you've risked." His voice rose. "And for what? For chess?" He said it like it was the most ridiculous thing imaginable. "For myself," she said quietly. "For the chance to be more than ornamental. To use the mind God gave me for something that matters." "Playing games matters?" "It matters to me." Philip looked at Helena. You enabled this. You convinced her." "I showed her an alternative," Helena said calmly. "She made her own choices." "She's ruined. If anyone discovers—" "No one will discover." Julian's voice cut through the chaos. "Because everyone here will protect Miss Price's identity. I'll ensure it personally." Philip turned on him. "And who are you to make such promises?" "The Duke of Thornbury, and someone who respects your sister's intelligence far more than you apparently do." The title made Philip pause, but only for a moment. "With respect, Your Grace, this is a family matter. My sister's reputation, her future. These are my responsibility." "Your responsibility is to support her choices, not control them." Julian's voice hardened. "She's brilliant, exceptional. And you're trying to crush that because it makes you uncomfortable." "I'm trying to protect her from herself. By telling her she's only valuable if she's silent and obedient? By treating her mind as something shameful?" Julian moved closer, his presence commanding. "Your sister beat me at chess. She beat nearly every man here. She's the finest player I've seen in years. and your response is to be embarrassed rather than proud. Philip's jaw worked. You don't understand how society functions, Your Grace. Women who step out of their sphere, they're destroyed. I'm trying to prevent that destruction. By destroying her yourself? Just more slowly? Julian's voice was sharp as glass. By telling her the price of safety is never being fully human? I'm not. Philip looked at Eleanor, something desperate in his eyes. Tell him. Tell him I only want what's best for you. I know you do, Eleanor said softly. But Philip, what you think is best and what I need aren't the same thing.
So you'll choose chess over family? Over your reputation? Over any hope of a decent marriage?
I'll choose myself. The words came out stronger than she expected. For once in my life, I'll choose being fully alive over being safely dead. Silence fell, heavy and aching. Philip looked between her and Julian, something shifting in his expression. There's more here than chess, he said slowly. Isn't there? You and the Duke are none of your concern, Julian said firmly. Your sister's personal life is her own. Not when it affects the family name. Not when... Philip stopped, his face hardening. You need to come home. Now. Before this gets worse. Before anyone else discovers what you've been doing. No. The word hung in the air. Philip, no. I won't go home and pretend I'm someone I'm not. I won't apologize for being good at something. And I won't let you or Father or anyone else make me feel ashamed for having a mind and using it. Philip looked stricken.
I'm not trying to shame you. I'm trying to save you. Then save me by letting me live. Her voice cracked. By trusting that I can make my own choices and survive their consequences. And what if you can't? What if this destroys you? Then it will be my destruction, my choice. She stepped closer to her brother, softening her voice. Philip, I love you. I know you're scared, but I need you to trust me. Please. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Julian. Your Grace, I need your word, as a gentleman, that you will protect my sister's reputation, that whatever has passed between you, I intend to court her, Julian said simply. Publicly, properly, with the goal of marriage. The words hit Eleanor like a physical blow. She spun toward him. Julian, no! We agreed to 1 week without promises. The week is ending. I'm allowed to want more. His eyes held hers, fierce and determined. I'm allowed to fight for you, Even if you won't fight for yourself.
I know what you think you want. Freedom, autonomy, chess. He stepped closer. And I'm telling you, you can have all of that. With me. If you'll let yourself consider it. You're proposing again, she said faintly. After I threw our match. After I lied to you. I'm proposing because you threw the match. Because you thought the only way to survive was to make yourself smaller. His voice roughened. And I want to give you a life where you never have to do that again. Philip looked between them, his expression shifting from anger to confusion to something Eleanor couldn't name. You want to marry her, he said slowly. A duke wants to marry my sister. I do. After she's been playing chess under a false name. After she's proven herself the most brilliant person I've ever met. Julian's voice was steady, certain. Yes, I want to marry her, if she'll have me.
Eleanor's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Julian, stop. You can't just...
Was she wrong? Philip interrupted, turning to Julian. About Crane's petition? The coalition? Would they have let her play again if she'd won? Julian's jaw clenched. No, probably not. Then she made a strategic choice, a sacrifice play. Philip's voice was quieter now, thoughtful. Just as you would have in her position. It's different when it's chess. When it's her life. Julian stopped, breathing hard. She shouldn't have to sacrifice herself to exist in this world. But she does, Philip said. The words hung in the air, heavy with truth. Your Grace, I appreciate your intentions, but courting my sister, even with the best motives, will invite exactly the scandal I'm trying to prevent. People will assume she's your mistress, that she traded favors for your protection. Then they'll be wrong. But the damage will be done regardless. Philip's expression was pained. This is what I've been trying to explain. In our world, perception matters more than truth, and the perception of a connection between you would destroy her. Eleanor felt the walls closing in. Philip was right. Julian was right. They were both trying to protect her in their own ways, and both their solutions ended with her losing something essential. Stop, she said quietly. All of you. Stop trying to solve me like I'm a problem. Everyone turned toward her. I appreciate that you care, all of you, but I'm not a chess piece to be positioned for maximum advantage. I'm a person, and I get to choose my own moves. She looked at Philip. I'm not going home. Not yet. I have one more day here, and I intend to use it. For what? To finish this properly. To say goodbye to Lady Helena and Lord Stirling. To collect my thoughts. She turned to Julian. And to tell you, clearly, without an audience, what I want. What I actually want. Not what anyone else thinks I should want. Julian's expression was unreadable. When? Tonight, after everyone else has gone to bed. Meet me in the library. Alone. He nodded slowly. As you wish. She looked at Philip. I'll come home tomorrow. We'll talk to Father together. We'll figure out how to manage this. But tonight, I need to end this my own way. Her brother's shoulders sagged. You've changed. In just one summer, you've become someone I barely recognize. No, she said softly. I've become someone I've always been. You're just seeing her for the first time. That night, Eleanor waited in the library until the house went quiet. The fire had burned low, casting flickering shadows across the walls. She sat in the same chair where Julian had first interrogated her about Tolstoy, about her ring, about all the secrets she'd tried so hard to hide. That felt like a lifetime ago. When Julian finally appeared, he looked exhausted, still in his formal clothes from dinner, but with his cravat loosened and hair disheveled from running his hands through it. Hi, she said quietly. Hi. He closed the door behind him, leaning against it. Hell of a day. That's one way to describe it. They stood there, an ocean of space between them, everything unsaid, hovering in the air like smoke. You threw the match, Julian said finally. I did. Why? Because winning would have cost me everything, and losing only cost me pride. It cost you more than that. His voice was flat, controlled, but she could hear the hurt underneath. It cost you honesty. Between us. Eleanor flinched. I know. I'm sorry. I should have told you my plan. Should have trusted you to understand. Her voice broke. I was scared. And when I'm scared, I try to control what I can, even if it means controlling other people's perceptions of me, their choices. Yes, she whispered. Even then, she moved closer, needing him to understand. Julian, I've spent my whole life being controlled. By my father, by society, by rules that say women like me aren't allowed to want things. The one area I can control is chess, and I used it badly. I used you to manipulate an outcome I thought I needed. You didn't need to manipulate anything. I would have helped you. By proposing marriage? By making me your responsibility? By making us partners. He pushed off the door, closing the distance. Eleanor, when I proposed, both times, I wasn't trying to cage you. I was trying to offer you protection that came with freedom. But I'm realizing now that I didn't ask what you actually wanted. I assumed. What do you want? She asked. Really? Strip away the titles and expectations. What does Julian want? He exhaled slowly. You. In whatever form you'll let me have you. As a friend. As a chess partner. As... He stopped. As something more. If you wanted that.
But not at the cost of your autonomy. Never that. I want more too, she admitted. The confession came out barely above a whisper. I want you. The man who sees me as a person first. Who challenges my mind and respects my choices. But I'm terrified of what wanting you means. Why? Because you're a duke. Because even if you mean well, even if you genuinely believe in my freedom, the world doesn't work that way. Your wife would be your property, legally, socially. Her voice cracked. And I can't survive being property again, even willingly given property. Julian was quiet for a long moment. What if we changed the rules? You can't change the law. No, but I can change how we implement it. He took her hands, his grip warm and steady. Settlements that protect your autonomy. Agreements that ensure your choices remain yours. Partnership instead of ownership. His eyes searched hers. I know you don't believe it's possible. But what if we tried? What if we built something different together? And if it doesn't work? If the reality of marriage destroys what we have? Then we'll have tried. We'll have fought for something better instead of accepting what's always been. His thumbs traced circles on her wrists. Eleanor, I'm not asking you to decide tonight. I'm asking you to consider it, to believe that another way might exist. She stared up at him, this impossible man who'd crashed into her carefully controlled life and made her want dangerous things. I'm still going home tomorrow. I know. I need time, space to think, without everyone watching, judging. I understand. But, she swallowed hard. I want to see you again. After I've talked to my father. After I've figured out what I'm actually capable of wanting, instead of what I think I should want. His expression softened. I'll wait, as long as you need. That's not fair to you. Let me decide what's fair to me. He leaned down, resting his forehead against hers. You're worth waiting for, Eleanor Price, even if you don't believe that yet. She kissed him then, desperate and fierce and full of all the things she couldn't say. He responded with matching intensity, pulling her close like he could keep her there through sheer force of will. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I should go, she whispered, before someone finds us and makes Philip's fears come true. Probably wise. But he didn't let go. Promise me something. What? That you'll keep playing. Whatever happens between us. Don't give up chess. Don't make yourself smaller for anyone. I promise. If you promise something in return. Anything. Stop trying to save me. The words came out gentler than she'd intended. I don't need saving. I just need... She searched for words. Someone who sees me clearly. And stays anyway. His smile was soft, almost reverent. I can do that. One more kiss, gentle this time, sweet and full of possibility. Then Eleanor forced herself to step away, to walk out of the library and back to her borrowed room. Behind her, she heard Julian whisper, Good night, Eleanor. She didn't look back. The journey home the next day was quiet. Philip sat across from her in the carriage, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not anger anymore. Not even disappointment. Something closer to bewilderment. "You really love it," he said finally, breaking the hours-long silence. "Chess." "Yes." "More than anything?" Eleanor considered the question. "It's not about loving chess more than anything. It's about what chess represents. The one place where my mind matters, where I can be completely myself." "And the Duke?" Her heart clenched. "What about him? Do you love him?" She looked out the window, watching the countryside roll by. "I don't know. I've known him less than a week. But he—" She stopped. "He sees me. Not the version of me everyone expects. The real me. And he doesn't look away." Philip was quiet for a long moment. "Father won't understand." "I know. He'll be furious, hurt. He'll say things he doesn't mean." "I know. But I'll—" Philip hesitated. "I'll try to help, if I can. I don't understand what you want, Eleanor. I don't understand why you'd risk everything for games and strangers. But you're my sister, and if this matters to you—" He swallowed hard. "Then I'll try to understand." Eleanor's eyes burned. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Father might disown us both." Despite everything, she laughed. "He won't. He'll shout and lecture and threaten. And then he'll pretend it never happened and go back to hoping I'll marry the vicar's son." "The vicar's son is a perfectly respectable—" "Philip!" He held up his hands in surrender. "Fine. No vicar's son. But you have to promise me something." "What?" "Whatever you decide about the Duke, make sure it's your choice. Not his, not Father's, not Lady Helena's. Yours." She nodded slowly. "I promise." The conversation with her father went exactly as she'd predicted. Shouting, lectures, threats of being cut off, locked away, married off to the first suitable candidate who'd have her. Eleanor stood in his study and let the storm wash over her, keeping her expression calm even as her hands shook behind her back. When he finally ran out of words, she spoke. "Father, I'm sorry I disappointed you, but I'm not sorry for what I did. Chess makes me feel alive. It's the only thing that ever has, and I won't give it up." "You'll ruin this family." "No one knows. No one will know. The Duke has guaranteed it." Her father's eyes narrowed. "The Duke. The Duke of Thornbury. Why would a duke concern himself with your affairs?" "Because he respects my abilities." "Respects your—" Her father laughed bitterly. "Men don't respect women's abilities, Eleanor. They want other things. And if you've led this duke to believe—" "I haven't led anyone to believe anything." Her voice hardened. "And you might consider, Father, that your assumption says more about you than it does about me." Silence. Then her father sat down heavily in his chair, looking suddenly old. "What do you want from me, Eleanor? Permission? Approval? I can't give those. What you've done goes against everything I believe, everything I've tried to teach you." "I know." "Then what?" She knelt beside his chair, taking his hand. "I want you to trust me, to believe that I can make my own decisions and survive their consequences. I'm not asking you to understand. I'm asking you to let me live my life." Her father's jaw worked. "And if you fail? If this chess nonsense destroys you?" "Then I'll have failed on my own terms, which is more than most women get." He stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled his hand away and turned toward the window. "Do what you want, Eleanor. You clearly will, regardless of what I say." It wasn't approval. It wasn't even acceptance.
but it was enough. The weeks that followed were strange and suspended. Eleanor went through the motions of her ordinary life: calling cards, social teas, the endless parade of polite conversation about nothing that mattered. But inside, her mind was elsewhere. She kept expecting the sky to fall, for someone to expose her, for the scandal to break. It never did. Julian's letters arrived like clockwork, twice a week, every week. Long, thoughtful missives about chess strategy, mixed with terrible puns and careful observations about his days. He never pushed, never pressured, never mentioned his proposals or her rejection. He just wrote and waited. "You're going to wear a hole in that paper," Philip observed one evening, watching her read Julian's latest letter for the third time.
Mind your own business. You're my sister. You are my business.
He sat down across from her. "Have you decided yet what you're going to do?" "No." "It's been 2 months." "I know." "He's still writing." "I know." Philip shook his head. "Most men would have given up by now, found someone else, someone easier." "Julian isn't most men." "Evidently." He leaned forward. "Eleanor, I've been thinking about what you said, about chess making you feel alive." She looked up, surprised. "And? And I don't understand it. I probably never will. But I watched you at dinner last week, making conversation with Mrs. Thornton about her rose garden, and you looked—" He struggled for words. "Dead. Like someone had snuffed out a candle behind your eyes." Eleanor said nothing. "Is that what your life would be, if you gave up chess? If you married someone respectable and followed all the rules?" "Yes." The word came out hollow. "Then don't." She stared at him. "What?" "Don't give it up. Don't marry someone who wants you dead behind the eyes." Philip's expression was pained but resolute. "I don't understand your choices, Eleanor, but I'd rather have a sister who's scandalous and alive than one who's respectable and hollow." Her eyes burned. "Philip." "The autumn tournament is in 3 weeks. Lady Helena wrote to ask if you'd be participating." He pulled a letter from his pocket. "Under your real name this time. No more hiding." Eleanor's hands trembled as she took the letter. "How long have you had this?" "A few days. I wasn't sure whether to tell you." "Why not?" "Because once you go back, once you play as yourself, there's no returning to who you were. You understand that, right?" She understood. "I'm going," she said quietly. "I know." "Will you—" She stopped. "Will you tell Father?" Philip smiled grimly. "I'll tell him you're visiting Lady Helena. What happens at the tournament is your story to tell or not."
Thank you. Don't thank me. Just—
He stood, moving toward the door. "Be happy, Eleanor. Whatever that looks like for you. Just be happy." 3 weeks later, Eleanor walked into the Harrington Chess Society under her own name. No disguise, no Margaret Shaw. Just Eleanor Price, chess player. The whispers started immediately. She kept her chin up, her shoulders back, her expression calm. Inside, her heart was hammering so hard, she thought everyone must be able to hear it. Lady Helena walked beside her, radiating elegant confidence. "Breathe, darling. You look like you're facing a firing squad." "I feel like I'm facing a firing squad." "Nonsense. You're facing small-minded men with fragile egos, much less dangerous than bullets." "Are you sure about that?" Helena laughed. "No, but pretend I am." They entered the main hall, and there he was. Julian stood near the entrance,
clearly waiting. He looked different somehow. Still devastatingly handsome, but there was something softer in his face. Something hopeful and uncertain that made her heart ache. When he saw her, his expression transformed. Joy, relief, want. All of it naked on his face for anyone to see. "Miss Price," he said formally, bowing. "Welcome." "Your Grace," she curtsied, fighting the smile that wanted to break free. "I hear you've been practicing." "I've had an excellent teacher, even if she did let me win our last match." His grin was wicked now. "I'm hoping to correct that error today." "I'm counting on it." They'd been paired for an early match. The tournament organizers, clearly hoping for drama, had arranged for the Duke and the notorious female player to face each other in the first round. Eleanor didn't mind. She was ready. They took their seats across from each other, the familiar ritual of arranging pieces, the weight of the crowd's attention. But this time, everything was different. No lies, no masks, just herself, fully visible. "Ready?" Julian asked quietly. "Absolutely." They played for 2 hours. No distractions, no provocations, just pure strategy and skill. Eleanor felt her mind expand, calculating probabilities, seeing patterns, anticipating moves. Julian had improved dramatically, pushing her harder than he had during the summer. But she was better too. Sharper, more confident. At move 63, she placed her queen. Checkmate. The room erupted in applause. Julian stared at the board, then started laughing. Genuine, delighted, free. "There she is," he said. "The real Eleanor. Finally playing her best. Finally brave enough to win." She stood, extending her hand. "Well played, Your Grace." He took it, but instead of shaking, he held on. "Have dinner with me tonight. Properly. I want to court you, Eleanor. Publicly. If you'll let me." Every eye in the room watched them. She could hear the whispers starting, feel the speculation building, and she realized she didn't care. "Yes," she said clearly. "I'd like that very much." His smile could have lit the entire room. The courtship that followed was unlike anything society had ever witnessed. Julian made no secret of his intentions. He attended every one of Eleanor's matches, sitting in the front row with an expression of fierce pride that made the other men shift uncomfortably in their seats. He introduced her to his friends as the finest chess player in England. He brought her books, not poetry or romantic novels, but strategy treatises and mathematical theories that made her mind sing. And he never, not once, asked her to be anything other than exactly who she was. "People are talking," Helena mentioned one evening, 3 weeks into the autumn tournament. "The Duke of Thornbury, openly courting a woman who plays chess. It's scandalous." "Let them talk," Eleanor said, surprising herself with how little she cared. "They're saying you've bewitched him, used feminine wiles to trap a duke." "If my feminine wiles include checkmating him in 63 moves, then I suppose I have." Helena laughed. "You've changed, darling. You used to care so much about what they thought. I used to think their opinion determined my worth. Now I know better." She looked across the room to where Julian was deep in conversation with Lord Stirling, gesturing animatedly about something. As if sensing her gaze, he glanced over and smiled, that soft, private smile that was just for her. "He really does love you," Helena observed quietly. "I know. Do you love him?" Eleanor considered the question. "I love who I am when I'm with him. I love that he makes me feel brave.
I love that he's never once asked me to choose between him and chess." She paused. "Is that the same as loving him?" "I think," Helena said slowly, "that's the best kind of love there is." The tournament progressed. Eleanor won match after match, her reputation growing with each victory. Some men still sneered, still dismissed her as a novelty or a scandal. But others, younger men, men who'd watched her play with open admiration, began to change their tune. "You're shifting the conversation," Julian told her one night, as they walked through Helena's garden after dinner. "Every time you win, you make it harder for them to claim women can't compete. One woman winning doesn't change systemic prejudice." "No, but it plants a seed, and seeds grow." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "Eleanor, I need to tell you something." Her heart stuttered. "That sounds ominous." "It's not. At least, I hope it's not." He took both her hands in his. "I've been thinking about what you said, about marriage being a cage, about wives becoming property." "Julian, let me finish, please." She nodded. "I spoke with my solicitors, at length. I've had them draw up documents, marriage settlements unlike anything they've ever seen." He pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket. "If you marry me, you retain full control of any property you bring to the marriage. You retain the right to pursue any occupation or hobby you choose, including chess tournaments. You retain the right to refuse certain marital expectations, without consequence." Eleanor's breath caught. "That's not legally enforceable." "Some of it is. The rest is a matter of my word." His eyes held hers. "And I give you my word, Eleanor. I will never try to control you. I will never ask you to be less than you are. I will never treat you as property." "Why would you do this? You're giving up rights that every husband has." "Rights I don't want." His voice was fierce. "I don't want a wife I own. I want a partner I choose, every day, for the rest of my life. I want you to stay with me because you want to, not because the law says you have to." Tears burned her eyes. "Julian, I'm not asking you to decide now. I'm just asking you to know. If you ever do want to marry me, it won't be a cage. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure of that." She stared at him, this impossible man who kept rewriting the rules just so she could exist freely within them. "Can I see the documents?" she heard herself ask. His face lit up. "Of course. Take as long as you need. Have your own solicitor review them. Have Helena review them. Have anyone you trust." She cut him off by kissing him. It was the first time she'd initiated contact since that night in the library. The first time she'd let herself want without immediately pulling back. When they broke apart, Julian looked dazed. "Does that mean—" "It means I'm considering it. Seriously. For the first time." His smile was blinding. "That's more than I dared hope for." The final match of the autumn tournament came down to Eleanor and a young baron named Thomas Hartley. He was perhaps 25, earnest and talented, with none of the arrogance that poisons so many of the older players. He'd watched her matches all season with open admiration, and when they shook hands before the game, he smiled genuinely. "It's an honor, Miss Price, whatever happens today." "The honor is mutual, Lord Hartley. You've played brilliantly this tournament." "I learned from watching you." The admission surprised her. "Me?" "Your match against Thornberry in the summer. The one you—" He hesitated. "The one that went the way it did. I studied the opening moves, before things changed. Your strategy was revolutionary." Eleanor's chest tightened. "Thank you. I know what you sacrificed. To stay. To keep playing." His voice dropped. I hope you know it wasn't for nothing. Some of us see you, really see you." She didn't know what to say, so she simply nodded and took her seat. The match was the most challenging of her life.
Hartley was good, genuinely good, not just competent. He'd studied her patterns, anticipated her strategies, prepared counters to her favorite openings. For the first time in years, Eleanor found herself truly tested. The crowd watched in breathless silence. Julian sat in the front row, his expression tense but proud. Helena beside him, gripping Sterling's hand. Even Philip had come, standing awkwardly at the back, but present. Move after move, they traded advantages. Eleanor would gain ground. Hartley would claw it back. The game stretched past 2 hours, then 3. At move 87, Eleanor finally saw it. The path to victory. Narrow, complicated, requiring perfect execution over the next 5 moves. One mistake, and Hartley would have her. She took a deep breath, and she played. Move 88, 89, 90. Hartley's face shifted from concentration to concern to reluctant acceptance. Move 91. "Checkmate," Eleanor said quietly. For a moment, silence. Then Hartley stood and extended his hand. "Magnificently played, Miss Price. You've earned this." The applause that followed was thunderous. Eleanor stood on shaking legs as Lord Harrington approached with the tournament trophy, a silver chess king that she'd watched other men claim for years. "Miss Price," he said, and his voice carried to every corner of the room. "Tournament champion." She accepted the trophy with hands that trembled. Julian was there instantly, at her side, his arm around her waist to steady her. "You did it," he murmured in her ear. "You actually did it." "I did it." The words felt surreal. "The first woman to win. Ever." She looked at him, this man who'd believed in her from the moment she'd beaten him, who'd protected her when she needed protection, and stepped back when she needed space. "Ask me again," she said. He blinked. "What?" "Your question. The one you keep almost asking. Ask me again." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Eleanor Price, will you marry me?" "Yes." The word came out clear and strong, carrying over the crowd's murmur. "Yes, I'll marry you. On your terms. On our terms. However we need to make it work." Julian's face transformed. Joy and disbelief and something that looked almost like tears. "You mean it?" "I mean it. I want to build something different with you. I want to try." He kissed her then, right there in front of everyone. The crowd gasped. Someone dropped a glass, and Eleanor didn't care at all. When they finally broke apart, she was laughing. "We've just scandalized half of London society." "Good. They needed scandaling." "Is that even a word?" "It is now." He grinned, and she realized she'd never seen him look so happy. "I should warn you," she said. "I'm not going to be a conventional duchess." "God, I hope not." "I'm going to keep playing chess, competing, winning." "I'm counting on it." "And I'm going to have opinions, loud ones, about everything." "Eleanor," he took her face in his hands, "I fell in love with you because of your opinions. Please, never stop having them." From across the room, she heard Helena's delighted laugh and Sterling's booming congratulations. Philip was pushing through the crowd, his expression caught somewhere between horror and grudging happiness. It was chaos. It was scandal. It was everything she'd spent years trying to avoid. And it was exactly right. The wedding, 6 months later, was small by ducal standards. Eleanor had insisted. No grand cathedral ceremony. No parade of aristocrats there only to gawk at the scandal. Just family, close friends, and the people who actually mattered. Helena served as her attendant,
eyes suspiciously bright throughout the ceremony. Sterling stood beside Julian, looking almost as nervous as the groom. Even Philip managed to smile as he walked Eleanor down the aisle, their father having declined to attend but sent his reluctant blessing. The settlements Julian had promised were signed and sealed. Eleanor retained her autonomy, her property rights, her freedom to compete. It was unprecedented. It was revolutionary. It was theirs. I, Julian Marcus Ashford, take you, Eleanor Catherine Price, to be my wife, my partner, my equal in all things. The vows weren't traditional either. I promise to challenge your mind and respect your choices, to celebrate your victories and support you through defeats, to stand beside you, never in front of you, to love who you are, not who I might wish you to be. Eleanor's voice shook as she spoke her own vows. I, Eleanor Catherine Price, take you, Julian Marcus Ashford, as my husband, my partner, my favorite opponent. Laughter rippled through the small gathering. I promise to be honest, even when it's difficult, to trust you with my fears as well as my dreams, to build something new with you, something the world has never seen, to love you freely because I choose to, not because I have to. When the officiant pronounced them married, Julian kissed her with an intensity that made Helena wolf whistle and Sterling cough pointedly. Wife, Julian murmured against her lips. Husband, she replied, though I prefer opponent. I'll take either. I'll take anything, as long as I get you. The reception was held at Helena's townhouse, filled with laughter and champagne, and chess matches that broke out spontaneously in corners. Eleanor beat Sterling twice, lost to Helena once, and played Julian to a draw that lasted until midnight. Best wedding ever, Julian declared, as they finally retired to their carriage. You're biased. Completely. Doesn't make it less true. He pulled her close as the carriage began to move. Thank you, Eleanor. For what? For taking a chance. For trusting me. For letting me prove that partnership doesn't mean losing yourself. She leaned into him, exhausted and happy, and exactly where she wanted to be. Thank you for waiting, for never giving up, for rewriting the rules. I'd rewrite the world for you if I could. I know. That's why I said yes. 1 year into their marriage, Eleanor stood before a crowd at the Harrington Chess Society and made an announcement that would echo through history. Beginning next summer, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room, this tournament will be open to all competitors, regardless of sex. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Lord Harrington stood, the same Lord Harrington who'd barely tolerated her presence 2 years ago. The Duchess of Thornbury speaks with the full support of the tournament committee, he said. And if his voice was strained, at least the words were right. We have seen excellence transcend expectation. We would be fools to limit it further. The vote had been close. Julian's influence, Sterling's persistence, and Helena's strategic maneuvering had barely secured enough support. But they'd done it. They'd actually done it. After the announcement, Eleanor found Helena in the quiet corner, eyes bright with unshed tears. You changed the world, darling, Helena said softly. We changed it. Together. No. I opened doors. You walked through them. Helena squeezed her hands. I'm so proud of you. Your mother would be so proud of you. Eleanor's throat tightened. I wish you could have seen this. Maybe she has. Somehow. That night, in the library of their London townhouse, Eleanor and Julian played chess until the candles burned low. You've been distracted all evening, he observed, capturing her bishop. Unusual for you. Thinking about the future? The tournament changes? That, and other things. She moved her queen, but her heart wasn't in the game. Julian, I have something to tell you.
He looked up, expression shifting to concern. What is it?
I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air. Julian's face went through a rapid succession of emotions: shock, joy, fear, wonder, before settling on something like reverent disbelief. We're going to have a child, yes. Eleanor. He was around the table before she could blink, pulling her into his arms, the chess game forgotten. A baby. Our baby. I know it's soon. We've only been married a year, and I have tournaments planned, and— Stop. He pulled back to look at her. Are you happy? She considered the question, really considered it, the way she'd learned to do instead of answering what she thought she should feel. Yes, she realized. Terrified, but happy. Then that's all that matters. But the chess will still be there. You can compete pregnant. You've said yourself it's mental, not physical. And after the baby comes, we'll figure it out together. He cupped her face in his hands. Eleanor, I didn't marry you expecting you to give up everything for motherhood. I married you expecting us to figure out how to have everything. Together. Her eyes burned. You always know exactly what to say. I've had a lot of practice. You're a demanding audience. She laughed, tears spilling over. I love you, she said. I don't think I've said that enough. You've said it every day. In how you trust me. In how you stay. He kissed her forehead. In how you let me be your partner. I love you in words, too. I love you, Julian. I love who we are together. I love you, too. More than chess, even. Now you're just being ridiculous. Possibly, but it's true. He glanced at the abandoned game. Shall we finish? Tomorrow. Tonight I just want to be here with you. They sat together on the sofa, her head on his shoulder, his hand on her still flat stomach, watching the fire die down. Do you think it'll be a boy or a girl? He asked eventually. I don't know. Does it matter? Not at all. Either way, we're teaching them chess from birth. Obviously. And they'll grow up knowing their mother is a champion. And their father is a gracious loser. He laughed. I've improved significantly, I'll have you know. You have. Another decade and you might actually challenge me. Is that a promise? It's a guarantee. She tilted her head up to look at him. Julian? Thank you. For what? For seeing me, from the very first day. For looking past the disguise and the fear and the pretending, and seeing someone worth fighting for. You were always worth fighting for. You just needed someone to prove it. And you did. I'll keep proving it, every day, for the rest of our lives. She believed him, not because he was a duke, not because he had power to make promises stick, but because he'd shown her, again and again, that his words matched his actions, that he meant what he said, that she could trust him with her whole self, the brilliant parts and the frightened parts, and everything in between. Your move, she said softly, gesturing at the abandoned board. I thought we were done for tonight. One more. Just one. He smiled, understanding. They returned to the table. Julian studied the board, considering his options. Then, instead of moving a piece, he reached across and took her hand. Checkmate, he said. That's not a legal move. It is in our game, the one where we both win. Eleanor laughed, that free, unguarded sound she'd learned to make without fear. Fine, you win this round. Do I get a prize? You get me. Isn't that enough? It's everything. He kissed her knuckles. It's absolutely everything. Outside, London slept beneath a blanket of stars.
Inside, two people who'd found each other across a chessboard sat in comfortable silence, their hands intertwined, their future unwritten but full of possibility. She had started this journey hiding behind a false name, terrified of being seen. She had ended it as a duchess, a champion, and, soon, a mother. But more than any title, more than any trophy, what mattered most was this. She had found someone who loved her not despite her brilliance, but because of it. Someone who made space for her to be fully herself. Someone who understood that the best partnerships weren't about winning or losing, but about playing the game together. And that, Eleanor thought, as she leaned into Julian's embrace, was the greatest victory of all. Not the checkmate, not the championship, not even the changed rules that would open doors for women who came after her. The greatest victory was choosing herself and finding someone who celebrated that choice. The greatest victory was love that looked like freedom. The greatest victory was this: a woman who refused to lose, and a man who never asked her to.